Welcome back to our show, Societal Science. Today we were talking with our guests, Dr. Chromosome and Dr. PopGen, about the accuracy of DNA ancestry tests. Thank you both for being here today.
Yes, of course.
Thanks for having us.
I've heard when you take a DNA test, the confidence intervals are typically presented at 50%. At 50%, is this really true, and what implications might this have?
Yes, DNA results can be very misleading, so it's important that when you discuss the results, you know what your DNA results can tell you and what they actually cannot tell you. So the 50% confidence interval points out the lack of precision in results from DNA tests. Therefore, there's a higher confidence interval, like 90%, that a company will give you, which will typically tell, for example, a much broader ancestry, such as China, for example. And then at the 50% confidence interval, they'll say you have Southwest Chinese ancestry. So this means that it's typically much more accurate and precise for a broad demographic rather than a specific one.
I see. So an individual who says they're 23% Irish is not necessarily true?
Well, yes. It would probably be more accurate for that individual to say that they have Northwest European descent, considering the confidence intervals. And it's important to realize that the DNA results that you get are based on probabilities of how your DNA is related to their reference populations. And it's also important to note that these reference populations are subject to change, because as our databases get bigger and they have more genetic information to code, they can change based on the new knowledge that we're acquiring. And so the percentages that we have, it's important to take them with a grain of salt, I would say, because they can change based on what the reference populations are, and also the confidence intervals for very specific regions are not very high, so we're not very confident in those results.
Can you talk more about the reference populations?
Yes, reference populations are typically biased towards people with European descent because we have a lot more genetic information from those people. So it's very much skewed unfairly because there's, again, a lot more information, so they can be a lot more specific and accurate when people have European descent. But if you have more Asian or African descent, they have a lot less genetic information to compare to. So your results are going to be a lot more generalized or less like specific regions. It's much more broad because they don't have enough samples to like determine specific regions. So the reference populations are very biased, and that's very important for the results, because if you are of African or Asian descent, your results are going to be a lot less accurate and specific.
Why do you think people take these tests, and what can they learn from them?
You know, I think people take these DNA tests for a variety of reasons, but I think one of them is that people try to, they really want to identify with a certain population and be able to also learn more about themselves at the same time.
I agree, and I would also add that a lot of people don't interpret their results very objectively, and they sort of pick and choose what they want to identify with and what they don't want to identify with, so it can be very biased.
And I agree. I think that your DNA does not define your culture. I think your culture is defined by how you were raised, how you grew up, the traditions that you were surrounded by, and that your families held. And so it's not as simple as looking into your ancestry or into your DNA results and saying that that is your culture.
That is so interesting. Thank you both for being here today.
Of course.
Thank you.